Peace and welcome to another episode of Wholistic Conversations. I'm your host, Brittany, and today we have a phenomenal guest, Tassili. Oh my gosh. If you are in Atlanta and you never been to Tassili Raw Reality, you must go. And if you follow me, you know I go there at least twice a week, posting my kale wraps. They are so delicious, and I'm so honored to be here with you. You're definitely an amazing woman, and I believe you bring a lot of healing to the community. So,
thank you. It's an honor to be here as well. I always really appreciate the opportunity to share the message. I can't even call it mine because there's so many that are now giving word sound to health and well-being. But I'm thankful for my portion.
Yes.
And the opportunity to share it through your platform.
And I think it's so profound how we met.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, we were talking about that, 6 years ago, you came to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you were introduced to me through our marketing director. And you were just a sweet little girl. Not little in the sense of being short, and you grew, but in the sense of your youthfulness and your innocence. And you're just sweet. You were so new coming to Atlanta and just open and, definitely on your journey, of health and well-being. And you were into, bodybuilding and sports and all that good stuff. And so, you really took a liking to the restaurant and the food and just the vibe. And so it's just been a pleasure watching you develop and grow and blossom. It's so beautiful as a powerful young woman who takes the time to empower others.
Thank you. I received that. And before the backstory to that was I went to South Africa. I was in college at the time. And I came back from there and I was like, you know what? I'm done with school. When I went out there, I seen how everyone was happy and the kids, everybody was free and they didn't have much. And I really just needed the courage to like, okay, I'm done with school. Right. And I was deciding between Atlanta or Houston. I came to visit Atlanta, loved it. And I was so eager to come where I was like, okay, I got to find a room to rent. And I went online, went to like Craigslist, found the room, never visited or anything. And I was working at a private school and my boss was like, did you get a ID picture of the person you're about to stay with? I'm like, no. So he was like, yeah, you might want to ask for that. I got the picture and I was like, oh my God, can I stay with this man? He looked crazy. So he was like, I actually have a nephew in Atlanta. So he called Jimmy and then he was like, hey, you can stay with Jimmy. And come to find out, Jimmy was staying at Tassili's,
upstairs.
Raw Reality upstairs. And and I never knew about Tassili's Raw, never been there before. So that was my first introduction to like moving to Atlanta and staying above your restaurant. So
yes, what? I had forgotten about that little pearl right there. But I think you were so busy moving around, getting yourself situated. I don't think I saw you that much, though.
Yeah.
And I was working, and you were making moves. That's right.
Yeah.
That's why you took a liking to it.
Yeah.
So it was home for a minute. That's what's up. That's even better. That makes it sweeter.
So I was like, wow, like everything is really working out and in divine order.
For sure.
Yeah. So I would love to talk about like where did you grow up? And let's talk about your childhood.
Okay. So I was born in Houston, Texas. Okay. And I stayed there with my parents until I was almost 5. It was like a couple months before I was 5. And then we moved to San Diego. And my parents were trying to escape the desegregating South. But even though it had been legally desegregated, it was still segregated. And they moved to California like a lot of black folks that migrated from the South out there, with the hopes that they wouldn't have to deal with such overt racism, only to find that the racism was still there. It was just covert.
Yeah.
So, I have to say, though, in many ways, the thinking was much more open, and the experience was really a blessed one during that time. I grew up on the tail end of the Black Power movement, civil rights movement, hippie movement, anti-Vietnam War movement, all of that. And I say on the tail end of it because even though my mother as a community activist had me and my little brother on the picket line boycotting grapes and lettuce, with Cesar Chavez, I wasn't old enough to do any of that by myself, And by the time I got old enough to do it by myself, a lot of that had died down. I think it was Nixon that came into office, and he was like, back to business as usual. He did away with model cities programs, and unfortunately, a lot of the black or community-oriented organizations, community-based organizations, I should say, got themselves into a situation because they depended on government aid. Initially, they were self-sufficient, but then this government aid was put out there, and these programs were designed to fail because they didn't empower people in any way to become and grow their self-sufficiency.
Because you can get stuck in that cycle.
Oh, my goodness.
Of having the assistance, and then you want to stay in the assistance, so you can't go outside. You can't make more than...
Right, or you think you can't.
Right.
Because still literally you can, but if your mind is entrapped, then that's where you will stay.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I was so eager to, start conversating with you that I forgot that at the beginning of every episode, we pull some random cards.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that real quick. Pull a card. This is to help us authentically, get to know each other.
Okay.
And we'll both pull a card. We'll do about 2 cards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you can go first. You'll read your question and then answer it.
What do I think happens after we die? That's why I said, ooh, yes. Okay. Well, I do acknowledge reincarnation. So for those that are destined to reincarnate rather, they'll come back. For those that have evolved to a level where they don't have to be in the karmic cycle anymore, they get to choose where they want to be and resonate as energetic frequencies, maybe as a star, maybe as a flower. If they choose to come back here, maybe they'll just exist in the space of space, as a thought. Or maybe they will come back as a part of a mass consciousness that is so evolved. Like, for example, a Bob Marley or a Marcus Garvey. I used to do spiritual counseling as a part of my life work. And I would periodically come across people who would say they were the reincarnation of so-and-so, some famous person like Bob Marley or Malcolm X or what have you. But then 2 or 3 years prior to that, there was somebody else that had come for a reading, and they said they were the reincarnation of that. And, when I went into meditation and asked Spirit about it, Spirit was saying there are some beings that have evolved so highly and with such power that when they return, they manifest in various different people form,
Okay.
So that the people that say that that is what is true to them have a modicum of truth in it, because they're carrying the essence of that evolved being in that way. So what happens for me and my understanding and overstanding and understanding of it is that, one, energy never dies. We're energy. So we're going to just transform into something else or someplace else or some other essence. And it's layered. And then so it just depends on the soul,
right,
and their evolution. And there are also, this last bit I'll say, there are also those souls that have sudden death or suicide or something like that. They get stuck in limbo, you know. And those are the ones that have experienced some sort of traumatic death. Those are the ones that, if we can, we should remember them in our prayers and rituals to assist them in their healing, so that they can move on as souls and break generational curses and things like that.
Okay. I like that perspective.
Thank you.
I do believe that we are infinite beings.
Yes.
I do believe that I believe we just transfer. We just transcend. You know, we just move to different states of being.
Yes.
So do we really ever die? No.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I said, if I decide to come back, I want to come back as the essence of the smile on every lover's face.
Yeah.
You know, just so that I am infinitude in the form of love as a smile when lovers see each other.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. And so my question is, when do you know you can trust someone? And I feel like trust is built, you know. When I used to think about trust, I'm like, oh, you know, you just give trust, and then when somebody show you who they are, then you don't trust them. And this new phase of my life, it's like, no, trust is built. You know, people have to earn your trust. Don't just give it away. So how do I know I can trust somebody, or when do you know you can trust somebody, is based off their actions, how they show up, and that will tell you a lot. Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. Even the part about being very trusting.
Yeah.
As a person, I'm very trusting in general. However, I have learned to listen to my intuition. I've learned to observe, you know, and watch how people show up, as well as research people's track records. You know, what have they been up to, you know, in their life? What are the fruits that they are reaping?
So tell me about a time where you trusted someone and you were like, oh no, I shouldn't have gave them that amount of trust.
Oh my God, you saw me roll my eyes up the top of my head. At the onset of COVID, I found out that my company was being embezzled by my upper level management. Yeah.
In what way?
I called them the infamous five.
When you say embezzled,
they stole money from my company, period, to the tune of $400,000.
And then how did you catch that? How did you?
Well, I was applying for a very large loan, and the broker he called me late one night and was like, Miss Ma'at, your balance sheet, these numbers, they're not making sense. And I said, really? I said, well, let me reach out to my accountant. He said, no. He said, I am pretty certain they're the ones that are doing it. Your accountant, your CFO at the time. I have a different CFO and a different accountant now. But I was just like in disbelief. I was numb because these people I trusted with my life. And I had given large sums of money to. So that they felt the need to steal it was beyond me. Also, I had done a program that we had all been a part of where integrity was the main thread of the program. And so it baffled me that these people could talk integrity, but then be thieves.
So but how do you confront them? Like, once you found out, what was the next step? Like, so I'm sure that was a hard conversation because, like you say, you trusted these people. You know, you probably knew them for a while. So, like, how do you have that tough conversation?
Well, like I said, I had to recognize that, one, their integrity lied in the fact that they had honor among thieves. Okay. They all knew what the other was doing, even though they weren't doing it together. Okay. How did I confront them? First, when I found out about it, I immediately called my god brother, who is a Babalawo, and I asked him to do a reading for me on it because I was numb and in shock. And even talking about it now, I'm still a little charged. I still got some energy around it. Although I've been doing radical forgiveness and working on forgiving these people. So I didn't, first I just inquired with Spirit, with Ifa, if it was true. Yeah. And the answer was yes. And then I started naming people, just random names, to see who was being identified. And the Babalawo, who doesn't know any, all he knew was I had a restaurant. He lived in upstate New York. He didn't know anybody in my world. He began to describe the people to a T. He didn't know their names, but he described them, you know, and I gave him names, and he was like, yeah. So then I knew who it was, and I was in disbelief. So he asked, what did I want to do about it? And I said, well, I don't know. Because at the time, I didn't want anything. I love these people. Yeah. So I didn't want anything bad to happen to them because I love them.
And that's actually really kind of you.
Yeah.
Because somebody steal that much money, you think, oh, I want them to go down.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, WTF on all kind of levels. I mean, for the first 2 weeks, I was just like numb. And I then began to systematically inspect what I expected to see where these discrepancies were. I had the broker said, put some other eyes on these numbers, which I did. I had outside eyes look, and all of them confirmed that, oh, yeah, folks is making off with some money here. Wow. So I had to see who had the direct hand on the money, which I knew was the CFO at the time. It was a general manager because we were still accepting cash. So the GM made off with like $108K. That was just from deposits that were supposed to be made twice a day. He was taking a minimum of $200 a day in cash. And, you know, so it was a systematic process in confronting them. Okay. It was bringing the facts and then waiting for them to respond. But also through Spirit and dealing with Ifa, I said, I want a confession. How about they confessed, but then tried to backtrack their confession? You know, so it was mind-blowing. Yeah. It was one of the most profound experiences I've had in my whole life.
Do you get your money back? No. In situations like
I mean, that was just for the year 2019. I don't know how much they took before then, you know, and no, because none of them really had any money. And the only person that did, he conveniently gave his house to his daughter 2 weeks after he was fired. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And he kept the books in such a way that it just looked like the books weren't kept. So it would be hard to trace. So even though when I contacted a lawyer and talked to them and he talked to the DA, they said I had a case, I had to be able to prove it. And technically, I would have had to then pay a forensic accountant, which would have been $20,000 some odd dollars, for them to go back and really dig deep to have anything that could stick, even though I had bank records and statements and things like that, it would have cost more money. And at the time, COVID was happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So,
So ways
So
now
no.
that you to help you prevent things like that, that's why you switch over to all no cash.
no cash. My family is helping me to run things.
Okay.
My family is in the positions of managing the money now.
Got it.
Well, it's to be their generational legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were to steal, they'd be stealing from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be no point in that. So, and I can trust my family,
That's good.
So, I I put other things in place so that, I have 2 accounting firms.
Mm-hmm.
So I do.
How the other person
I put put things in place so that will never, ever, 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 ever
mm-hmm.
happen again.
Yeah.
So we were expanding at that time. We had other locations that we were preparing to move into.
Mm-hmm.
We had one location that was 80% built out. So all those things had to go away.
Okay.
Yeah. It was pretty traumatic.
Wow, I'm sorry that happened to you. Yeah, could that?
Yeah, and
you learned.
I learned a hard lesson, but I also had to then be accountable to say, well,
mm-hmm.
what was my part in this?
Mm-hmm. And so what was your part?
My part in it was twofold. One, in becoming a restaurateur and a business owner, and particularly in the realm of food, because prior to this, I did hair. I was a natural hair care provider
mm-hmm.
for 35 years, And so, and I worked for myself. I was self-employed. So there were things that I just didn't know that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
To know what to look for, to put in place, and so on. So there was that.
Okay.
But the other part was I had seen signs and I ignored them because I blindly trusted these people. And I had some other personal things going on with my family, like my dad, my stepmom died. I mean, it was just all kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And on the backside
mm-hmm.
of things. So I was traveling a lot to California, and I entrusted them
mm-hmm.
to run the business, and they ran it.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
they ran away with it. I tried to, not quite.
Yeah.
But so my accountability was that I had to I learned to inspect what I expect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that and I would say that to anyone who's in business. You still have to be willing to look at your own stuff. Even if you're paying someone else to do it,
mm-hmm.
you have to be sure that they're doing what they say they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And to not be afraid to ask the questions, even if you think you might look stupid. Ask.
Yeah.
You got to inspect what you expect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So growing up, were your parents vegan, raw?
Oh, no.
No.
In fact, my dad used to tease me about trail mix. Eating trail mix. He was like, oh. But no, not at all. My father was a doctor. He was an internist and a cardiologist, so he thought he knew everything about everything.
Mm-hmm. Were you the black sheep?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mother, pardon?
How was that?
It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And, I felt like who are these people? When I thought about my family, or like, why am I here in this family? Because I'm so different than everyone else. And they probably felt the same way, but none of us really voiced it. There just was a lot of conflict.
In what ways
all the time.
Were you different growing up?
Well, being the oldest, and 5 years difference between me and my next sibling, and I was the only girl, I was pretty independent. The Sagittarius, too. It was independent by nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always drawn to mysticism, spirituality. Nobody else was.
Mm-hmm.
I was African hippie, as my mother used to say.
Yeah.
Nobody else was. Because I was very militant, my father was always upset with me and would be upset with my mother because he felt like she encouraged my militancy. But I read books. I read incessantly. I'd go to the library and check out, the 5 books they let you take, and I'd be done with them in a couple of days and go back and get some more. So I just had a consciousness that was different than what they expected. And also, I have to say that they raised me to be an independent thinker, but they didn't know what that looked like. Mm-hmm. So how can you prepare for something that you don't know?
Exactly.
So I know they did the best that they could. But remember, the era that I told you about was like the 60s, and the 70s. Mm-hmm. So you had the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement. You had Black people migrating to different parts of the country and experiencing more freedom, if you will, mm-hmm. because the racism was more covert. You had the Black Nouveau Riche, which my family was a part of, and the other doctors. It was Black doctors community. Mm-hmm. The Huxtables. Yeah, that was a real thing. I lived that. Mm. When many of the doctors' wives saw Clara Huxtable, they said, "Oh, I can go to law school," and they did and became lawyers. So it was a deep thing. Even coming from the South, my grandparents and on both sides, they were hard workers. They were part of a very well-to-do Black community coming out of Houston. Houston has a lot of old Black money, like Atlanta does. To me, Houston was always a low-key Atlanta.
Yeah. I feel like that's everybody, 2 places they think about moving to: Houston or Atlanta.
Right. And so Houston doesn't really brag about it. They will if you're there, mm-hmm. Because they talk about Texas being the largest state. So they live big, but they got a lot of old Black money. Mm. And so my family coming out of that, on my mom's side, but then my dad's side, they were light-skinned. So they came out of that bougie light-skinned stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had to deal with that too because I was considered one of the darker ones in the family. Okay. So it was an interesting experience, and my parents wanted to escape the madness, which is why they moved to California.
Mm. So so you grew up, eating regular, what was a childhood meal?
So I was about to say my mom was somewhat of a gourmet cook, but she did it for the family. She liked experimenting with things. My dad just liked a good meal. They loved soul food, but not the chitlins and all that. We didn't have chitlins in the house. But my mom did her best to have what was considered a balanced, nutritious meal. Mm-hmm. Again, my dad being a doctor, he was always saying, well, you should eat this way, you should eat that way. But it was the standard American diet. Mm. It was a sad diet for real. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of waste. We fed a lot of people. Yeah. Our friends were always over. We always had a lot of people at the house. Both my parents are Sagittarians. So there was always a party, a celebration. Okay. Something happened. And even if it wasn't, just every day, we had so much food. Mm-hmm. People
how did you
could
transition from eating the sad diet to eating the glad diet?
The glad diet, right? Yeah. It started because I noticed, because I was a sugar addict. Oh, my God. My stomach would hurt sometimes so bad from so much sugar. Yeah. I started noticing a correlation then. But it didn't really have me wanting to make any change until I was in middle school and I kept getting strep throat. And the doctor, our pediatrician, saying that, well, you need to get your tonsils removed. Everybody was getting their tonsils removed at that time. So they removed my tonsils. And what I noticed after that was that anytime I would have dairy, I would get all this phlegm in my throat. And apparently what was happening was my tonsils were absorbing it, thus creating the strep throat. Mm-hmm. But once my tonsils were gone, there was nothing, no filter. And I just would have these globs of mucus in my throat. So I'd spit it out. And I just noticed every time I drank milk, had ice cream, cheese, that kind of thing, I just have this glob. So I stopped drinking milk.
Okay.
I kept eating ice cream, but we weren't eating that every day. Mm-hmm. So, and I was a sugar addict. So, I would just kind of ignore it. But I started slowly weaning myself from dairy, even though, I loved me some cheese. Oh, my God. And when I finally did become vegan, cheese was like the last thing
you got rid of.
That I got rid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And what were some of the health benefits after you eliminated cheese and dairy from your diet and meat? Yeah.
Well, as a child, I noticed that I didn't get sick as often. I was always very athletic, so I was always outdoors, playing games, swimming, riding my bike, horseback riding, volleyball, mm-hmm. flag football, all those kinds of things. I love playing, climbing trees, whatever. I just noticed I didn't get as sick. Mm. Right. And as I got older, and I was in college, I had some friends that began to introduce me to being vegetarian. There was no such thing as vegan back then. Mm-hmm. It was in the 70s and 70s.
Yeah, but vegetarian back then meant
you ate vegetables.
Exactly.
And if you were ovo-lacto vegetarian, then you had eggs and dairy. But if you were a vegetarian, that's equivalent to what a vegan is now. Okay. So I got pregnant, much to my parents' dismay, in my sophomore year. And, they wanted me to, my dad didn't want me to have the baby. And I was like, I'm having this baby. So I did. And it really encouraged me to pay attention to what I was eating. Mm-hmm. Like I said, some vegan friends, right before I got pregnant, actually, asked me if I knew what I was eating. Mm-hmm. Because I was an M&M addict. I was a Hostess cupcake addict. Okay. Yeah. And so, one day they came and they showed me a brochure about what was being done to the pigs, to the animals. And I was just really, really grossed out. I was so upset. I went to my biology teacher and asked him about that. And he did a whole class segment on preservatives. Yeah. Again, I was just grossed out. I was like, you're kidding me, all this stuff. And so
what are preservatives and why aren't they good?
Well, the preservatives, as he was explaining, many of them stay in our bodies 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and they form as free radicals, so the body can't digest them. They don't know what it is. And free radicals eventually come together and clog arteries or turn into disease. Mm. And when my vegetarian friends at the time asked me to start reading labels, and half of the things in the Hostess cupcake, I didn't know what it was, what those words meant. I mean, now riboflavin was one of them. I didn't know riboflavin was a B vitamin. I had to begin to do some research, but it made me start thinking about things beyond just the limited knowledge that I had and the habits that I had. And when I got pregnant, I began to read these 3 books. They were the Vegetarian's Bible. Okay. During that time. Well, the main one that was Vegetarian's Bible during that time was Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. That was the gospel. And the second holy book was Cooking with Mother Nature by Dick Gregory. Mm-hmm. And that was important because Dick Gregory looked like us. Yeah. And the third book was Survival into the 21st Century by Victorus. I always have problems with this man's name. Skolvinkas or something like that. But anyway, those were the books that laid the foundation for most vegetarian living during that time, vegetarian lifestyle. And
and you learned about veganism and
I learned about vegetarianism first, right? And became a vegetarian.
There we go. Right during your a little bit before you was pregnant, right?
Well, I learned about it before I was pregnant and decided to become that while I was pregnant.
Okay.
My baby's father, who later became my husband, or should I say husband? He became my husband. I had said we were going to be vegetarian together. He was Seventh-day Adventist, and so he was raised in that environment. But when we got married, he was like, "Yeah, no, I was just playing."
Oh, he tricked you.
So he did, and so what happened was I started eating fish and chicken again.
Okay.
To keep peace in the house. Well, no, I wasn't really craving it.
Okay.
But I was 20.
Yeah.
And I was a new mother, new wife. All of that was mind-blowing, and trying to maintain a new lifestyle or start a new lifestyle was really kind of overwhelming. Yeah. So my compromise was that I would make everything from scratch. So I did as few preservatives as possible, few additives as possible. I even made candy for my children, biscuits from scratch, everything. Yeah. So as to do away with the processing. And back then, we didn't really have processed food like we do now.
Oh, for sure.
I learned about veganism in the 90s when it became a thing.
Okay.
And the word vegan comes from Germany.
Okay.
And the animal rights group that started from there, and they were very adamant about not using anything that had animal byproducts.
Okay. Yeah. And talk to me about going raw. How long were you raw before you opened Tassili's Raw Reality? Because I know that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's
only eating fruits and vegetables, not
disciplined.
cooked. So how long did you go raw? And then what were some of the health benefits as well?
So let's rewind back to the mid-'80s when I met one of the founding fathers of the raw food movement, Dr. Aris Latham, and he's the one that I credit for my learning about raw foodism. I met him at a metaphysical retreat in Mexico that was held by the Institute of African Mysticism. And when there and I met him, he had prepared this wonderful feast for us. It was just the most divine food I had ever tasted. And he was located in L.A. I lived in San Diego, so when I returned, I went to work with him and learn about it. San Diego's like 2 hours, drive time. So I'd go up there on the weekends and just learn. But at the time, I was still eating fish and chicken, still a hardcore sugar addict. And I just had the hopes of one day becoming vegetarian. I became a vegan when I moved to Atlanta. So that was 85. I moved to Atlanta in 88. And I moved to Atlanta in 88 when I met my second husband. He was a vegan. He went by the title vegetarian, but because he was a Nazarite, he would be the definition of what we call vegan now.
Okay.
So in taking the vow of the Nazarite, which you all can learn about in the Bible, it's Numbers 6, verse 6. It talks about not cutting your hair, talks about not eating flesh, and really abstaining from anything dead, period, not even wearing animal byproducts. So when I took the vow of the Nazarite with him, even though our relationship only lasted for 4.5 years, I maintained the strict vegan live it, because as a Nazarite, we didn't eat fermented foods either. So that was a whole nother level,
right?
Of eating, because the cheap food sweetener, commercial food sweetener, was white grape juice. Back then, like they use high fructose corn syrup now.
Mm-hmm.
And because grapes are, a no-no to the Nazarites, I had to make everything from scratch. So I'm giving you this background so that you can learn how I became a raw foodist.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I learned how to be fearless with herbs and spices, because, again, we had to make everything, And it was 20 years later, after being a vegan for 20 years, that I began to experience the onset of arthritis in my hands as a braider, lactician, and a starchitarian. I said it. I had become a starchitarian. A friend of mine who was an MD and had been a raw foodist for many years pointed out to me that I was eating too much starch. And so I said, well, let me experiment and see. So I went a whole week without starches and found that what he was saying was true.
Mm-hmm.
The pain and stiffness went away. Mm-hmm. It has never returned. And
I actually think that's a very common thing.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
When you first transition to being vegan, you eat a lot of starch.
Yeah, people want the bulk,
mm-hmm.
and people are sugar addicts because starch, all those carbs, eventually turn into sugar in the body. And, even though the things that I was eating was organic and they were healthy by themselves, they were compound starches, and I wasn't drinking enough water and I wasn't eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables. Mm. So that was turning all the starch into paste around my joints. Mm. So I knew at that point that, and this was the top of 2008, I knew I had to make a lifestyle change. Still had 2 teenagers at home, so I did not force it on them, but I did introduce them to the raw food. And I offered to help a friend of mine who was starting a raw food. In fact, she actually asked me, well, okay, rewind a little bit. I said I was going to be a raw foodist for a year to see if it was all that it was cracked up to be. When I did that, a friend of mine said, I'll join you. Okay. She got an opportunity to open up a raw food component inside a new vegan restaurant. And she asked me if I would help her. So I said, sure. So I did. So I did it like as a hobby kind of thing to help my friend. And people really love my food. She and I ended up parting ways about 3 months thereafter. It was kind of little professional jealousy because although her food was good, people preferred my food. Yeah. So I was like, deuces, I'm out. Yeah. I don't even do food. I do hair, So I was content to go back home and, do my hair. And people, though, love my food. And they began to stop me and call me and ask how could they get it. And that's how the Raw Reality was eventually born. I began to do festivals, did catering, and 3 years later, I ended up with the brick and mortar. But I was in 4 different locations in the West End for 3 years, building my customer base. Yeah. Little did I know, oh my God, I got to say that, we have our plans and the Most High has its plans.
For sure.
Never would I ever have considered this path if I had known what's going to be involved. I would have said, let me find another way to serve you, Most High. Let me find another way. But this is my life's purpose, and I'm living in it, and I'm loving it, and I'm grateful.
Yes, and the food is amazing. Like,
you. Thank you.
you know, I'm like, she must put some magic in that food.
Love, girl, it's love. People ask me that
Yeah.
all the time.
For sure.
What, I have been accused of being a whole witch, just putting all kind of hocus pocus in it. And I'm like, for real though, it's love.
Yeah, because
love.
randomly I can be, I could just be out random day and I just get that taste in my mouth. I'm like,
yes,
I gotta get that Tassili's.
That's it.
Yeah,
and the food talked to me.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the food was inspired by things that I loved eating.
Okay.
When I cook, focused on cooked foods. And by the way, I am not 100% raw. Mm-hmm. You may see me chowing down on a veggie burger.
Yeah.
Not the Impossible Burger, but veggie burger.
Yeah.
Got to clarify. You may see me eating some chow mein or something, that's cooked. Because when I decided to become a raw foodist, I said I'm going to be 98% raw. Because in creating a balance for myself, in those 20 years, I had seen the extremes on both ends. Mm-hmm. Not all vegans or plant-based is healthy or good for you.
Yeah.
This is not. And, I was a living example of that because I was, again, like I said, not eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables and not drinking enough water. Mm-hmm. So I considered that I'm living in a city, first of all, a city. Yeah. Okay. So I'm dealing with environmental toxins. I'm dealing with the fact that, particularly at that time, there still were not many options for vegans in Atlanta. And so there was not the support. And so then to be a raw foodist, that was really going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And I also recognize that it gets cold here. And sometimes I want more than cayenne and ginger. Mm-hmm. I want something hot.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't want to feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody else trying to shame me about it. Because that's something that people, and especially vegans, do really badly.
Yeah.
Now, we learned it from our meat-eating family and friends who, teased us about eating rabbit food and all that. But I had literally become a vegan snob at one point where I was saying with my friends, oh, so-and-so act like that because they be swining and dining. They just be on that meat tip. Yeah. What? But we were just sending out the same amount of hate that had been leveled on us. And I shouldn't say hate, it's shade. Hate can be strong, but shade.
Yeah. And it's hard too when you put yourself in a box because now people are putting expectations on you. And then when you do something outside of that, they're like, oh, you said you were doing this. Exactly. And now you're not. So
And I had to just keep it real from the perspective that I had begun to idolize the cultural, spiritual people in the community. Not that they asked for that. They didn't. Mm-hmm. But, I realized that in my vegan snobism, I just had put people on a pedestal.
Yeah.
If they had, a 15-syllable African name, long locks dragging on the ground, wore African clothes every day. Now, mind you, I was that person. Mm-hmm. But, and if they were vegan, I just thought that they earned my trust. It was all good. Go back to that trust question.
Yeah.
And I found, there are some really divine pork eaters and there's some really wicked vegans,
Exactly.
So I had to really begin to look at the character content of the person. Mm-hmm. What they eat is the icing on the cake. Yes, food can influence your personality and behavior. That's no doubt. But it's not everything. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely not everything.
And I heard you say, oh, impossible. No, I don't eat impossible.
It's impossible for me to.
Tell me why. What?
Well, because the Impossible Burger is GMO. It tells you that it is a GMO product, genetically modified organism.
And why do we want to stay away from GMO foods?
Because it's synthetic. The body can't recognize it. So it wreaks havoc in the body, period. Now, I don't tell people that, oh, you're going to die if you eat that. I don't say that to you. I encourage you to do your own research, okay? Because there are a lot of foods that are GMO that are not labeled GMO. So you don't even know.
Right.
Okay? Because the FDA so conveniently made it so that these manufacturers don't have to label it anymore. They used to have to, but they don't now.
I do see it on more packaging now, like partially GMO ingredients.
Well, they'll say biologically engineered.
That's another one. Yeah.
You know, natural flavors. They'll say all kind of things. There's more, though, that they don't say. So if you're seeing more that says it, just think about what's not saying it. Okay, because even the label organic, when the FDA comes out and gives the organic seal, they don't come back out and check to see if those farmers are still growing their food organically. The next day, the farmer could unethically, but start using pesticides. You know, I don't know that they actually, well, one of my mentors told me this, that you can buy an organic seal. You know, if your farm, you have an organic farm and it's downriver or downwind from a hog farm or a chicken farm, the water table is contaminated. But it can still be labeled organic. And the biggest, most detrimental thing is that the FDA has allowed for foods that are GMO to be labeled organic.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, but think about it. They're grapes. Grapes grow with seeds. But now you could buy organic grapes that don't have seeds.
That is interesting.
How is that a thing?
Yeah.
I was in one of my favorite health food stores the other day, randomly picked up a bag of lemons, trusting that this store wouldn't sell GMO lemons knowingly. Get home, and I look at the bag, and it said seedless, naturally. What the heck?
Right.
There is no food that is seedless naturally. So I promptly took them back and complained. I said, how did this even get in here on your shelf? They're under new management.
I already know who you're talking about.
And the new management, unfortunately, is not a vegan. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, we want for people to, even if they're not being vegan, to at least be plant-based. At least have some consciousness about the food that you are selling, that you are preparing. You know, and that's in a perfect world. We recognize that it's not, because, I mean, most of the people that work in my restaurant are not vegan. And, you know, ideally, when I opened my doors, I thought that the vegan and vegetarian was going to be my customer base. I knew the raw foodist wasn't, because most raw foodists make their own food at home.
Right. Yeah.
But when I was subletting inside of Healthful Essence, that's when I really officially got started as the Raw Reality. I began talking with many of our customers, our joint customers, and they'd buy food from Princess and they'd buy food from me. And I'd come to find that most of these people, well, I won't say most, but at this point, 65 to 70% of my customer base still eats meat. So it's still most. Most of the people at that point, it was like 30%, still ate meat. They just wanted to be healthier. They wanted a healthy option, or they were foodies and they just loved delicious food.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was healthy was a plus for them. So, you know, my biggest message is balance. How do people find a balance, you know, in this day and time with this plethora of processed choices, with all the trickery going on with the labeling? How do you find the balance?
Wow, that's a really good question. And I feel like a part of balance includes spirituality.
Absolutely.
And I seen you do Kundalini.
Yes.
So what is Kundalini? What are the benefits? And what is it? I tried it personally.
So are you speaking about Kundalini Yoga?
Kundalini Yoga.
Okay,
yes.
yeah, because the term Kundalini, it speaks of the Kundalini energy, which is the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and the spinal fluids that come from the root chakra, or the sexual organs, our sex organs, and rises up the spine when we do pranayama, yogic breathing, when we do certain yoga postures, and of course when you're having sex, making love. If you are focused in utilizing the energy in a spiritual way, then you're bringing it up your spine to your crown chakra, the top of your head, which is the crown chakra. And if you're applying certain principles, then you can utilize that energy to heal your organs as well as to elevate your consciousness spiritually. Kundalini Yoga, because there's been so much abuse of the sexual energy, the yogic disciplines that deal with the Kundalini energy per se, they try to focus on white tantra, which deals with more of an energetic frequency and not the actual sexual contact. But in fact, it's the yin and yang blend that is what activates the energy to raise it inside of you. Kundalini Yoga is a very vigorous form of yoga, and I do that, and I'm planning to start teaching again at the I Am Ascension Temple of Love, which is the yoga center right above the restaurant.
Yes.
So when you come to the restaurant and you see that door, the purple door on the far left, that's the temple. So we do have a IG page.
Okay.
And we have speakers and things like that. And we have been traditional.
What's the name of the IG page?
It's I am Ascension Temple. I Am Ascension Temple. It's not the whole thing. Okay. So I Am Ascension Temple.
Okay.
And I wanted to say all last year, for the most part, until the fall, we were holding the Healer's Alchemy every first Sunday, and we'll be getting back into that in the spring. And so with that, we feature different types of healing modalities, different spiritual paths. We have speakers come, we have vendors come, and they share. And you can learn more about Kundalini Yoga there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I think it's important for people to develop a spiritual practice, and
Yes.
you know, because I believe it helps you stay grounded and allow you. I really enjoy meditation because I feel like I can escape the world and just go to a whole nother place, and it's peaceful, and I just forget I'm human.
It's so real. It's so real.
Yeah.
I agree. As I was talking before about balance and saying that it's more than just the food. Yes. I've seen many 100% raw foodists who aren't balanced because they don't have anything to ground them. The ones that I've seen that are balanced do some form of yoga or meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong. They do some sort of energetic exercise that allows them to be centered and grounded. So it is a part of holistic well-being.
Okay.
You know, it is.
So how do you find your peace in the midst of chaos?
Sometimes riding my bike. You know, if I'm like, I like to ride on the Beltline where there's hundreds of people out there. And folks may say, well, how can you ride in the middle of all the people? So it's like being in it but not of it. You know, and I enjoy the interaction energetically of people who are into energizing their body and their mind and their spirit. I enjoy Kundalini Yoga because it is so vigorous. It gets the lymphatic system going. It, increases the breath and raises and intensifies the chi, you know. I think it's important for people to have the spiritual component, whether you're religious or not. I promote spirituality, which is just being in tune with nature and acknowledging a divine intelligence. Something that's keeping all this together.
Yeah.
Something that's making your heart beat and making you remember to breathe, All of that is essential to holistic well-being. And finding that peace can be also taking my shoes off and going standing in the backyard in the grass.
Okay.
It could be hugging a tree. It could be just observing some children playing and laughing. It can just be laughing.
Yeah.
It can be being of service.
Yes.
When I'm downstairs in the restaurant and just interacting with the guests that come through. Getting stories from people about how the food has transformed their life in a good way.
Yeah.
These are all things. And meditation.
Okay. So what do you enjoy most about being you?
Everything.
Yeah.
I love me some me.
Yeah.
It took a while, because being the black sheep, going back to that topic, I felt very awkward and out of place. Everything I tried, groups, religions, clubs, everything, relationships I tried to be a part of, I just never seemed to fit. I don't know that I was socially awkward. Maybe I was. I don't know. But if I was, it was because I just didn't feel like I belonged.
Yeah.
And many times I felt like I wasn't of this earth, And as I became an adult and began to meditate more and embrace the visions that I had, because as a child, I always had visions I could see.
Like visions in your dreams or?
Dreams, but mostly clairvoyant dreams. I would see and hear, clairaudient, clairsentient, I would feel also. So that added to my awkwardness because my family told me that I wasn't seeing ghosts, that I wasn't hearing what I was hearing.
Because
so
those you were confined in them and tell them,
because
hey,
I'd be scared. I'm like,
yeah.
oh my God, who is that man in the corner? But I was the only one seeing it. Or I would hear voices and they tell me I wasn't. Stop saying that. I don't believe you. Shut up.
Right.
So consequently, I felt alone and scared a lot.
And
as a child.
How did you channel that? Like, how did you gain the ability to say, you know what? I know what I see. I know what I hear. And your parents are telling you, no, they're suppressing that, right? At what point did you say, you know what, let me sit in that and experience it? Because I remember my first time meditating and I was really scared, because the idea of being in a dark room, being quiet and still, I'm like, I'm going to see shadows.
Yes.
So my first time, I'm like, you know what, let me meditate with the lights on. It made me feel safe. It made me feel. So how did you nurture your visions and the voices you were hearing? And because I feel like that could be scary, It
was very scary. Like I said, as a child, I was scared a lot. I would say that because it is a part of who I am, though, as a clairsentient being, meaning that I can see and feel, and I'm a sensitive. I had to learn how to accept that, because wherever you go, there you are. Other people would see it in me. Like I went to Mexico. I just learned how to do tarot reading for myself. I've always been drawn to mysticism. So let me start there. Let me rewind, start there. Yeah. So even though I was afraid of it, I was always drawn to it. It's a part of who I am. So it was myself calling myself.
Okay.
And more recently, I've come to accept that I do officially assist others on the other side in communicating on this side, and sometimes I midwife people to the other side. I've done that. So when I was having these nightmares and these folks would be coming to me, I learned, because I'd run from them. But I more
so
recently,
was that like your dream? Like,
yeah, like I was being chased.
Oh my God. I experienced, that's like one of my reoccurring dreams.
Yeah.
Somebody chasing me and I'm in fear.
And so more recently, because of the shadow work that I've been doing, I began to find that they were coming to me for healing. And I was running because I was scared. Like, I know you don't want me. They're like, yes, we do. But because they're traumatized, they're disfigured, they're distorted, you know, they're scary beings.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid like that anymore. But I had to come to terms with it. And it's a process. It's a journey. It's a growing into who I am. It's a becoming. And so in the process of that, as I was sharing about Mexico, someone had given me some tarot cards and a book called The Bible and the Tarot. And I had started reading it. And so I started doing readings for myself. And I traveled back down to Mexico with my older children when they were little boys. And on my journey, I kept being stopped by people asking me for readings. You know, tú eres un divina, you're a reader, you're a diviner. And I'm like, I don't have a sign on me that says that. These people didn't know me, but they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And it got to a point where in one little town we were staying in, the receptionist at the little hotel kept coming upstairs and asking me to do readings for her. And I'm like, what's going on here? You know, I can't even speak Spanish that well. You know, I can get around, but not to do a reading. And I had done readings for other people. So after like the fourth time, I said, let me do a reading on that because she was so insistent. So when I did a reading on it and you know, Spirit was saying, yes, do it. I made a promise at that point that I never would hurt anyone, never knowingly mislead anyone. And that if this is really a gift that I have, if it's really a calling, that it be taken from me if I ever abused it. Because I never wanted to hurt anyone. So I was guided to sage the room and to say prayers in all the four corners of the room. I was guided to do things that I didn't even understand why I was doing it until much later in my life. So when she came and she pulled the cards and I started speaking in Spanish in a way that I know I don't know. Okay. So that was like a huge confirmation for me. And it was so on point that she went and got her cousin. And I wouldn't take money from them. They wanted to pay me. But I wouldn't take money because I was afraid. I was like, if something goes wrong, I've heard about Mexican prisons, and I would never want to be arrested for being a charlatan, you know, and separated from my children. And oh, God, no. So I let them pay me in food.
Okay.
Bring me food. And in fact, once we finally reached our destination, which was in central Mexico, the first month I was there, I fed me and my children doing readings because people would bring us food because that's all I would allow.
I believe that is very important for people to know that. I feel like for me right now, I'm in one of my affirmations, I say, thank you, God, for trusting me with your vision, right? Because I'm like, you planted this thing inside of me. And if it's in me, that means I'm capable of doing it. And you trust me enough to have this big vision, you know? So I think that, like you say, people coming to you because they see something in you that you didn't see in yourself. It's relatable, right? Like, and I think it's important for people to know that everybody has something in them that they can offer.
So true.
And that they can give, you know. And I feel like everybody got a calling, right? And if you listen and if you see the signs and if you hear the message, because it was around you, right? It kept showing up, kept knocking at the door.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, so I love that. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I'm honored to sit down and talk to you and get to know you on a deeper, you know, level. And what's one piece of advice that you would like to give to the world? If you had one thing to say, what would it be? I know that's deep. Like, like think about it. Mm-hmm.
Gratitude. Just have gratitude.
Yeah.
To your point, I wrote a book called The Journey to Selffulness. And being selfful is a space of self-love that's not selfless, where you're putting everybody else first, nor is it selfish, where you're putting only yourself first and you become narcissistic. But it's that place in the middle where you tap into gratitude. You tap into the abundance of the all that is. Mm-hmm. And you become so grateful for your place in it, and the realization that that abundance of love will never run out. Never. That level of gratitude then allows you to love others from your overflow, in opposed to giving so much of yourself that you're empty, or hoarding so much of yourself that now you're lonely. Mm-hmm. You want to be in that place where you can be full of yourself in a good way, full of self-love. Mm-hmm. I had to look at that word, using word sound power, being a child of hip-hop, and paying attention to words. And I remember moving into a new apartment, and I was just feeling so full, and I was like, I'm so full of myself. And then I caught myself. I was like, oh my God, that means I'm conceited. I don't want to be conceited, because that's the way we viewed that term. Mm-hmm. But then I thought, but who else am I going to be full of? I can't be full of anybody else but me. Mm-hmm. So where is the love for me? Why can't I celebrate my happiness? Why can't I acknowledge that I deserve this blessing? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? I can. I really can, because I do. And that's when I began to realize that I was falling in love with myself. And then being able to rise in love with myself and stand in love, in my square of truth, that yes, I matter. Because out of the billions of cells of sperm and eggs that come together, here I am. Yeah. And here you are. Yes. And here the audience is. We all are here intentionally, on purpose. Mm-hmm. Now, we may not know what that purpose is. Now, my book, The Journey to Selffulness, which they can find on Amazon, and also Come to the Restaurant, helps one to find their purpose. I give snippets of my life story, and then a place where you can journal. Okay. And I ask very poignant questions, such as yourself. But you don't have to share with anybody, just you and you. Mm-hmm. And the parts of myself that are not so lovable, I've learned to embrace too, and to take the poo-poo of life. I don't know if I can cuss on
yeah, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So to take the shit of life and turn it into the fertilizer that helps me to grow as a star seed, and shine unapologetically, and through that book, The Journey to Selffulness, which is a journey to within, people get a chance to be in touch with themselves and learn to be unapologetic in their own shine. Yes. So it's an honor and privilege to be able to share that information with you and with others.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And I'm so thankful to have you here. I believe people will be able to tap in with themselves after hearing this podcast. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you. And I'm so thankful that we cross paths.
I know, right?
Yes,
that's so dope.
So amazing.
Yes, that's so dope.
High fives, good energy.
Yes, positive vibes.
Yes.
And may you continue to be peaceful and prosperous and powerful and passionate.
Yes.
Yes, in your life.
Yes. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Wholistic Conversations. I'm your host, Brittany, and we had the pleasure of speaking with Tassili. And thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all again on the next episode.
Peace and love.
Yes.